In the cybersecurity field, there is a massive talent shortage, and that's an opportunity for you, the viewer, to be able to get into cybersecurity. And so in this video, we're going to be breaking down several cybersecurity positions by type and just kind of explaining their role. And maybe that is, one of these could be something that you would be interested in and can apply for. Hi everybody, welcome to StudioSec. Thank you for watching. Like this video if it's helpful, comment down below with any kind of position that you're after, and subscribe for more content I'm posting every week. Cybersecurity is a massive field. It really is an industry unto itself. But that isn't necessarily something that many people would really realize whenever they're getting into the industry at first. So, today we're going to look through a few different positions that you might be interested in, and we're going to kind of analyze what they do. Now, an important thing to understand is that oftentimes some of these roles will be rolled into one, where, maybe an organization that doesn't necessarily have a very large or robust security budget, they might have, their security personnel wear multiple hats, and that's totally normal. We're going to talk about these roles kind of like, it's a larger organization and they can't afford to split these out and have, individuals doing each individual task. So, and I'll point these out whenever we go through there. So of course, the first position is going to be your ethical hacker or your red teamer. So if you're not familiar with what red teaming or blue teaming is, basically blue team is the defense and red team is the offense. So basically, organizations that have a larger cybersecurity budget can afford to have what's called a red team. So basically, they simulate their own offense. And no, they're not, using that offense to go attack other companies. That's illegal, obviously. They're using that offense to simulate what adversaries are doing. So a red teamer is basically they're an ethical hacker. They are hacking the company to simulate real world attacks. And that can do one of a few things. It can give the blue team some time to train and to be able to drill on their skills. It can give employees a kind of a real world experience and an idea of, okay, this is what this attack looks like and this is what you need to do in that moment. And then it can also be a nice audit for your security infrastructure. If your red team is able to just bust right through, then clearly there's some work to do. But the red team is in a constant communication loop with the blue team to say, hey, here's the attack that we did, here's our scope, and here is how we've been able to succeed. And then you can kind of negotiate, well, how can we get better? How can we improve the defense? So in a way, the red teamers are kind of still defenders, because they're ultimately motivated by improving the defense of the organization. However, they're doing so with offensive tactics. Now, these positions are very competitive, and they're competitive because they're pretty rare, and they're also, you need a pretty good technical background. You need a good understanding of how these tools work, of how the applications that are being used or in the environment work, and kind of thinking outside the box, being able to attack problems from different directions and being able to do that. Well, of course, there's a lot of people that can do that. And so that's why those positions are highly sought after. But another thing is trustworthiness. Obviously an employee or an organization needs to know that whoever they're hiring onto their red team is trustworthy, that they will be able to use discretion when talking or referring to their role, and that they can make sure that they're staying within that target scope. Scope is incredibly important for ethical hackers. You cannot go outside of that scope. And what that means is whenever, you start, or, an ethical cyber attack, I guess we'll say, where the red team is actually starting to do their attack on the blue team, they have certain constraints that they have to stay within. For instance, you're attacking these applications, you're not attacking this section of the company. Clearly or obviously, you cannot go after a third party because you don't own them. You know what I mean? And those are some out of scope areas that red teamers cannot go after. Now, obviously, attackers will go after those things, so there has to be kind of a balance where you're making sure that you're red teaming your environment, but you're also keeping the security up everywhere that maybe you don't quite have control. You're at least filtering what's coming in, but at least for a red teamer, you have to stay within that scope, and that takes obviously some discipline, but also just some knowledge on where those boundaries lie in a technical environment. Now, the next is a security architect. And really, this is a kind of a generic term for really anybody kind of operating in the blue team. And I've kind of divided this out because this is one where you might have, a security architect that's playing a number of other roles that could be divided into different categories. So the definition really for a security architect is similar to a red team, but on the blue team, obviously, where they're anticipating adversary action to mitigate access or unwanted access, right? And so they'll do that by doing a number of things. They'll do so by administering the network and different systems on the network. They'll do so by providing training, by doing some level of threat detection, by doing some level of incident response. Those are all things that a security architect is responsible for. Now, like I mentioned, in a larger company, so those roles are going to be divided out because there will just be so many things going on that you can't just put that on one individual. So, we're kind of dividing those out. So one thing that a security architect will do is engineering. Well, in a larger organization, you'll have an engineering team that's responsible for that. They will be responsible for, obviously, the creation, the maintenance, and the upkeep of all the different applications that the security team needs to be able to run, right? And that's kind of their job. It's the network and systems admin. The next will be your threat hunters or your detection team. And we've gone over threat hunters already. Here's a link to a video on that. But threat hunters are responsible, or those in the detection team, I'm going to use those interchangeably here, but they are responsible for using the data that they have collected or that they have available to them to detect or hunt for indicators of compromise. And that will give your incident response team an idea of, hey, here's an incident we have discovered, here's why. And so basically that's kind of how that workflow works is, the engineering team will set up the tools. Your threat hunters or your detection team, they'll use those tools to look for different indicators of compromise. Once they find an indication of compromise, they'll pass that to your response team, and the response team will basically work on quarantining, mitigation of access, and then eventually, getting rid of the attacker, and then, trying to fix whatever problem was there that the attacker took advantage of. So that's your response team, and that's kind of your three different hats, I guess you could say, that your security architect would be wearing. Next is going to be your security software engineer. And this is, kind of in a way similar to your engineer in the last position. However, they're entirely focused on creating these new programs. So if you think about, a software architect working on like a SIM, right? Or working on any other kind of security program. That's their job. They're basically just building this application to make sure that it has, strong functionality, good security, and it's fitting a need within the cybersecurity community. So if you like coding, if you like building applications, and you love cybersecurity, that could be a perfect place for you. The next position may also be a good place for you, and that's being a forensics expert. A forensics expert is responsible for basically taking a malware artifact or a piece of leftover malware that they have discovered or they have saved and reverse engineering it. And that allows them to do a number of things. You can learn more about what the attack is designed to do, what that malware is designed to do. You can even learn about the attacker. For instance, does this malware call to a command and control server? Where's that command and control server at? That might be kind of important, or does it call to other programs? Does it call to other malware? These are things that you need to know as an organization if there's been an incident. And so that's what your forensics experts are there to do. Now, question for you, do you love math? If so, maybe being a cryptographer is the thing for you. And we've all heard of cryptography. Here's a link to hashing and encryption for you. But that's basically what you do is, you're building different cryptographic algorithms. And the reason this is important is, as technology gets faster it will be easier for that technology to break older encryption standards. And as that happens, it's going to be very important for cryptographers to make sure that there are newer algorithms available, that there are new standards available to be able to pick up the slack and provide security for the data that we need to keep secure. So that's what cryptographers do, is they just, they build new hashing and encryption algorithms that can't be broken, which sounds cool. I'm not great at math, so it's not for me, but it could be for you, and that's awesome. Now, this next one is the big kahuna, and that is your Chief Information Security Officer. And this sounds like a cool one. It does kind of sound like a cool one, at least to me, but it also probably has, it definitely has a lot of pressure on it, and that's because your Chief Information Security Officer, you also see that in an acronym, a CISO. Your CISO is the head honcho. They're responsible for the security of your organization. And so, that can be a number of ways. That can not only be the digital security, that can be the physical security in your organization. Anything that pertains to information security, your CISO is responsible for. So no pressure, but you'll basically see that, your CISOs will have been in the industry for a little while. They'll know a thing or two, hopefully. They will be responsible for policies, making sure that those are not only up to date, but they're putting out new policies if there needs to be a new policy, revising one where needed. They'll also kind of take the security team and provide a direction for them, kind of give them, here's our objective. Here's what we need to get to in the next fiscal year. And they'll provide kind of the framework for how the team gets to that point, right? And so it's a leadership position, but it can be very rewarding because, if you're a CISO, you can basically say, well, I was accountable for security at an organization for a time, and you can list off a bunch of security improvements, and that would be pretty cool. Now, one of the things that probably doesn't get talked about is, because they're a chief officer in a company, they will have to interface quite a bit, probably with a lot of, depending on the size of the organization and, its hierarchy, they'll have to interface with a lot of non-technical people. And so explaining the necessity of a lot of security, platforms that need to be implemented or practices that need to be implemented to non-security people that may not quite see the value, that does take a level of translation. And so that's where the CISO comes in. And so, you not only have to have that in-depth technical background and understanding, but you also have to be able to speak two languages. You have to speak, technical with your team, but you have to be able to, transcribe that to English whenever you're talking with people or whatever, language you're speaking. So that there are so many opportunities out there in cybersecurity. In the cybersecurity field, there is a huge gap for cybersecurity talent. And this is an opportunity for you to dive into any one of these roles. So, hey, hit like if this video is helpful. Comment down below with what kind of position you're after, and subscribe for more content I'm posting every week. Thank you.